G'day friends, welcome to another video in my Page in 10 series. My name is James, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new. Before we get started, I just want to preface that this page is for any of those pages that you have stuff on, but there's a lot of random negative space and you just think, what am I going to do to fix that or fill that? I know sometimes it's tempting to think that we will come back one day with the most perfect idea in the world for that space. The reality is, as we move on, typically that becomes more and more unlikely. So what I like to do is use those spaces as either places to kind of swatch things or practice little doodles or write random little things or even just stick random ephemera that I have that I want to keep that I just don't use very often. But today I thought I might go through one of the simplest things that I do in my journaling practice that is something that I do, really often, and that is just drawing vines and leaves all over my page. I know this sounds overly simplistic, but that is the point of these Page in 10 series, is that we're not doing things that the most difficult things in the world, and we are trying to just complete pages in 10 minutes. And this is one of those things that I find it invaluable to my process, not so much because it fills the space. Let's be real, I don't need to fill all my spaces to feel happy with my journals, but because this process of drawing all these leaves and vines activates like the most simple part of like Tetris play in my mind, fitting all the little leaves and vines into places, but it is super monotonous and it is really relaxing. I find it actually helps me get into my flow state because it's difficult enough, it engages enough of my thought process to keep my brain active, but it is simple enough in the movement for me to be able to kind of tune out, and that is like one of the ways you can kind of get yourself into that flow state. So drawing all these leaves and vines is very therapeutic for me, very cathartic, very monotonous, very, mind numbing, but it's also a nice little place for me to be. So I'm going to show you how I do that and talk through some of the things I think about, just because it's such a simple process. I guess I've never felt the need to explain it before, but there are some things that go on in my brain, so I'll share that with you today, and hopefully this is a nice calming, relaxing way for you to spend some time as well. I will say there's the added benefit of this S-curve shape that we do, that with repetition and confidence in drawing that shape, it actually comes in super useful for a lot of my more complicated and like technically involved drawing skills. So this is actually something that builds a nice little bit of muscle memory for you, and I have noticed the improvement in my own work over the years I've been doing this. So really simple, really fun. Before we get started, I know I've said this for like 2 minutes already, but grab yourself some colors that match the palette on your page already. This is just to kind of bring a little bit of cohesion to it. So I've got this photo of Oliver and Steve on the couch. Oliver is this kind of cream color. I've got this orange. I'm also using a brush tipped marker. Marker is just easier than using paint for these 10-minute videos. But just grab yourself something with a brush tip. It's going to be a lot easier to do it. You can do it with pencils and pens and just draw the leaves, but the actual brush tip is what I want to use because it's just perfect. I'm using a little bit of blue because I have this date up here, and then the red for the pillow and also the date. So this is my little palette for this page. I don't know how far we're going to get through it, but these don't tend to take too long, so we might end up on this page as well, and just in case I have another host of colors to kind of match this spread. In any case, let's set our timer and get going. Set timer for 10 minutes. Even that sounded fake as well. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to grab my pen, my marker with the brush tip. The first thing I want to do is look at like one of the biggest spaces I have. So I have this space here, and I also have kind of the border. Smaller spaces I have, like tiny spaces in here, that's up for debate at this point whether I'll fill it, but I want to put a line that kind of travels into that area. And I just lightly change my pressure and wiggle my pen as I'm going. That gives me a really natural looking line. So I've kind of filled that space. This here though, there's still like this big kind of open square space. So I'm actually going to run a line right from the center of it back to this main stem. I can do that here as well. See this kind of bulging space here, this half circular space? If I go right to the middle of it, like if I picture this as the whole space, go right to the middle with my pen and then trace a line back to my main stem. Doesn't have to be the closest line to it. It can come all the way down as well. I'm giving myself like the branch or the vine, and this is key for me to start because I like to start with that and then put all my leaves on. because when I put my leaves on, I'm actually trying to fill negative space. Remember that I say that a lot, but negative space is kind of the key to filling the page. You want to be able to fill it with something. So here when I start my leaves, I'm actually going to use the brush tip. If I angle it really like 45 degrees to the page and then place it down, I'll get the taper of the brush, kind of the profile of that brush tip, if I just push into the page and then lighten up my pressure as I come back to the stem. I might even do it the other way as well and do it double-sided. Now it depends. I've gotten pretty used to just doing one stroke back to the leaf and having these kind of really rough, raw-looking edges, but you can also do it in 2 strokes. You just want to push into the page and then let that pressure up. Push into the page and let the pressure up. Can you see I'm just trying to fill all the space that's available? So the leaves are actually going to vary in sizes. I could put a teeny tiny one there so that I don't hit that writing, but I've filled that space. And this is all personal preference. You could want huge leaves that fill a lot of space at once, especially if you're using a really big journal. Or you could do teeny tiny ones depending on how much you want your brain to turn off. Here is where we get a little tricky because we've got an extra branch here. Do I continue on this vine or do I start on this one? I actually think these are more important to get their full moment. So when I get around this area, I'll probably leave the main stem and come over to this one and start filling this area. These are the double stroke. And then I've made it back to the main stem. Here, they're going to be a little smaller, and I'm going to leave a bit of space. I can fill it, like I'll actually fill this whole space here. It just means that when I come down this main vine, remember I'm just trying to fill the space that's left. There just won't be any space for me to put leaves on there. It actually doesn't matter. You can just keep going from here, and no one's going to know. No one's going to know. How are they going to know? So if you don't have TikTok, you really don't know what I'm quoting. But if you do have TikTok, I'm sure you've come across that sound like 1,000 times. Now, I'm not doing this because I'm being filmed. I'm filming this, but I would typically tilt my book so that my wrist never has to move. And I can keep doing the same little S-curve tapered stroke the entire time, which means when I'm on this side of the vine, I'm actually going upside down. It's not always. I'm even going to put them coming off the page. But I find it harder to get the stroke from the left than I do from the right. The right seems really easy to me to get this stroke because I'm right-handed, and it feels like the profile is just pushing into the page. When I do it the other way, I have to reverse that taper. So I do just like to switch my book around and kind of rotate it like it's on a lazy Susan. Sorry to my Susans out there. I don't know why you got the bad rap for being lazy. So here is what we've done. You can still see there's a bit of negative space around here. I actually don't mind if these stems don't come from the bottom of the page. I can have them come from the side here as well. This is a very light color, so it's not really going to show up too well. And in that case, I might actually grab a pen, draw over my stem, and then pop those leaves back out. It'll have this really wonky looking screen print effect. I think that's really pretty as well for those lighter colors. Let's get the orange in here. Now I might come from the side and just remembering to put some extra stems into that open space. I'm going to leave this vine a lot more sparse. So I'm going to put less leaves on, just so you can see that the effect is still filling space. It's just not as full. We're all going to have our different preference for how big we like to draw the leaves, how many leaves we like on there. Some people will just do one stem, so you might just have a stem come up. There's a little bit of space in here. I'm going to draw a little blue one. Again, pretty light color to be able to see. So I'll grab my pen. I don't know where it's gone. Oh, there it is. And I'll pop that out again. I really like a lot of vines of different sizes and different fullnesses, just basically covering the page. I will keep fitting them in everywhere. I could even come back through here and fit tinier little stems into all these little spaces. When they get really small, sometimes you just have to do a little flick of the tip, and that's enough to look like the leaves. I could get lost for hours doing this. The last thing I'll mention, just before I run out of time, any edge that you feel like there's just a bit of open space, you can just have them come off the edge. You don't actually have to draw the center vine. You can just have some leaves coming in from the corners and from the sides, and that'll look like it expands beyond your page, that there's a whole world of leaves going on. I might even bring some of those leaves over the top of my picture to tie that picture into my page. It's a great way to blend ephemera into your spreads, is to work over the top of them and have things disappearing underneath them as well. But if you just have a few of the leaves coming from the edges of the page, it will look like there's a lot more going on that we just can't see. If you like it to look a bit more full than that, because I mean it is technically, you know, full, but if you would like it to look a bit more complete, I guess is the word, I would consider coloring the background just a solid color first, like maybe watercoloring a lot of that negative space first and then doing your vines over the top of it. It's just really hard to go back in and color the background at this point, but you can grab a water brush if you've used a water-based marker, and you can kind of pull out some of that ink, especially towards the edges, and create a pseudo border, especially if you've wrapped a lot of the edges, a lot of the border of the page with vines. I find it's a nice thing just to pull it out to the edge and create like a little filled in border. And you would just need a water brush if you've used a water-based marker. I usually just stop once I get to the vine. It's going to turn orange now because I've hit the orange marker, and then it'll turn pink again. Sometimes when you use water with these water-based markers, you'll actually find all the different colors that the dye ink is made up of. It's really interesting with the browns and with the blacks. It pulls out a lot of greens or purples and magenta. You don't realize those colors are in that mix until you activate them with water. This works particularly well on these coated papers. These are like thin Tomoe River type papers. But you can do it on watercolor paper. You just might not get as much of the ink flowing because it tends to seep into the paper quicker and more fully. A lot of this ink just remains on top of the surface and it dries, but it is easily activated from where it's sitting. Now we've kind of framed that page. If I get really, really, really in the zone, I will go over absolutely everything and like put in the veining of the leaves as well. I've done this for hours at a time before. It all just depends, and sometimes I've done it super duper neat, and other times I haven't. You can grab a pen as well and just put some little offshoots of black and white leaves. Again, it's all about filling that negative space anywhere you see it. Press stop on that. And I'll just finish up this little vine. So there you go. That is leaves. I know it looks pretty simple, but hopefully some of those thought processes going on in my head, some of those tips are helpful to either engage you in the process more fully or make you feel like you've got a bit more of a direction to go in. But those are some of the things that I think of when I'm doing it. There are probably other things that I think of as well, but that's what I happen to think of in these 10 minutes today. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully you've got a page where you can try this out on. Just remember those few tips. I think especially starting with maybe a few colors that match what's already on the page. I think that's a nice way to pull it all together. But this has been another Page in 10 video as a part of the series. Please don't forget to hashtag any of the work that you do from these series videos. You don't have to, by the way. I know I keep saying it, but you really don't have to hashtag it. If you just want us to enjoy what you've been creating, I'll be searching the hashtag, and I know other people like to search the hashtags as well. So just if you want to, there is a hashtag. to be able to put your work into. Other than that, I will see you again for another video in the series sometime soon. Until then, bye.